Let's get things started with Georgia's 10th District Congressman Jody Hice. Congressman, thank you so much for coming back.
Brad, always an honor to be here with you. Thanks for having me.
Listen, it has been quite a busy past few days, few weeks, hasn't it?
It has been. It's been a whirlwind. But, you know, things are getting done, and we're thankful for that.
Let's just lead off with FBI Director Comey, now former FBI Director Comey. Your thoughts on his firing?
Well, first of all, I would commend him on his job. He's got a very difficult job, particularly during a very contentious time. I mean, let's face it, this has been an extraordinary time for him as well. Timing, obviously, is a concern and all that sort of thing. But, you know, at the end of the day, you've got a controversial individual who's been involved in some controversial decisions. I think it probably needed to happen, and I'm comfortable that the president is going to find a replacement that's going to keep the FBI in the place of honor that it's always been and doing the job that they need to do. It's unfortunate that this has happened to Comey, but I think it's, given the circumstances, it's about all that could have happened.
Do you wish that you would have had more notice, or that people might have come to you and given you just a bit of a heads up before this happened? It seemed sudden.
Yeah, that kind of thing doesn't bother me personally. That's not a decision that I'm responsible for in the first place. Of course, we've had hearings with Comey and Oversight and Government Reform Committees, had multiple hearings. Yeah, I'm pretty familiar with what all's taken place, but at the end of the day, the president has to make the decision he believes is in the best interest of the department and the country. He did so, and I trust him, and we'll move forward from here, and we'll get a good replacement.
Well, once that replacement is named, any feeling at this early stage as to whether this will impact negatively the investigations that Comey was leading, both into potential Russian interference with our elections and potential people connected to Trump being involved as well?
I don't think it'll impact that whatsoever. Those investigations are underway with or without Comey, and they will continue. So I think all that will continue right on path as it has been, and we'll get the results of those investigations when they conclude.
You know, if you stay on the internet long enough and read enough articles, you start to have wild thoughts, and I just ask you this question with that in mind. Do you think President Trump will make it through this term? Oh, sure. You 100% do?
I absolutely do.
Do you have to believe that, though, because of your wish to be reelected? Do you have to link yourself to the president and kind of keep your fingers crossed at the same time?
No, that has nothing to do. I hold that position because the majority of Americans elected him to be president. He's doing what he said he would do, and I believe we're going to get a lot over the finish line. And you've got, you know, frankly, you've got a Democrat Party that's trying to obstruct and stop and shut him down at every angle. That's what's going on, but I think he's proving to be committed to what he ran on. He's going to get those things done, and at the end of the day, I think he'll not only make it, but he'll be there second term.
Let's talk about health care reform. You all, the House, just advanced the Republican version of health care to the Senate, where who knows what will happen to it, but let's first talk about the efforts in the House. Are you pleased with the package that got sent to the Senate? It's
as good as we could get it. You know, initially I was opposed to the first bill that came down the pipe because it actually would raise premiums, and that to me was a non-negotiable. It was unthinkable to me that as a Republican Party we would replace Obamacare with something that actually was going to raise premiums. And so many of us stood opposed to that, and fortunately they pulled that particular bill from the floor, and from that time there's been multiple negotiations from the White House to different groups within the conference and so forth, and everyone's come to the table and put their ideas forward, and we've been able to accept a few amendments, all of which will absolutely definitely lower premiums, and that was the big issue. You never get the bill that you want,
right?
But I think this bill was as close as we could get to accomplishing what needed to happen. I still wish we'd have a full repeal. We'll keep pushing in that direction, but apart from that, this is a good, decent, strong bill that the Senate has, and hopefully they'll make some positive changes, if any, and we'll get this thing done.
Any idea on a timetable for that, and will it look anything like its current form?
I have an answer to no to either one of the questions.
Sure.
I have no
idea.
Early, yeah. It's early. The Senate never does anything quickly. And who knows if they will, hopefully they will at least take the House bill as a foundation and build upon that. But you never know with the Senate. So I anticipate it'll be at least a couple of weeks, and this thing will go to conference, and we'll duke it out there, and hopefully we'll get it all completed in such a way that it will be very good for the American people.
What are you hearing in the 10th? What do people think about what you're doing with health care? That'll be my first question along those lines. What do they think about it?
You know, we've had extremely positive reactions from people throughout the 10th District. First of all, from the perspective, and there was some angst to begin with.
Right, I mean, you hear about lawmakers getting shouted down when they go back home. Have you been shouted down?
I have not at this point. You know, I mean, I'm not, it's all knock on wood here, but no, at this point, the vast majority of people have been appreciative that we stood opposed to a bill that would have increased their premiums, and they appreciate the fact that we stood in there and fought for lowering premiums. And at this point, the overwhelming majority are very appreciative of the bill that has moved on to the Senate. Again, that's not everyone, but overwhelmingly that's been our response.
Well, sticking with constituent response, what do they think about the president in general this first 100 plus days?
Well, there again, the 10th District was strongly in favor of Trump, and they still are.
That hasn't changed.
That has not changed one bit. You know, personally, I give the president strong marks coming out of his first 100 days in the midst of tremendous opposition, in the midst of having obstruction, even getting his cabinet in place. I mean, he's had one obstacle after another. But look, we've gotten Keystone passed. We have a Supreme Court justice. We have continuing congressional review acts that have dealt with multiple regulations from the White House. We have our military that's back intact. We've got the economy happening. We've got immigration crossing the border, 70% down. I mean, one thing after another. There are some great victories in spite of tremendous opposition, and I give him high marks for doing what he said he would do.
Real quickly, going back to the Comey firing, just please take me to the moment that you found out about it and just tell us what you said or thought right when someone said, hey, Congressman, they fired Comey.
Yeah, actually, I found out about it totally just like in a casual conversation like this. Someone just said, what do you think about Comey? And I said, what about Comey? And they said he was just fired. So I pulled out my phone and looked, and sure enough, and you know, my immediate thoughts, to be quite honest, were question marks. Like, what's behind this? What has come up that I was not aware of? I'm not surprised that it came to this point. I was a little bit surprised with the suddenness with which it happened.
Yeah.
But you know, I don't know that that any of us were overwhelmingly surprised that it came to this point.
Congressman Jody Hice is our special guest on the Means Report today. When we come back, we're going to talk religious freedom. The president just signing an executive order along those lines. We're also going to talk about the cyber threats that this country is constantly facing. And, you know, we're fighting that battle right here at home in our cyber district. So we'll cover those hot topics with Jody Hice when our conversation with him continues.